Hey buddies, some Spuggy here coming at you with another Borderlands 3 video. Today we're actually going to be talking a little bit more about Tiny Tina Wonderlands. There was this article and interview with creative director of Wonderlands by the name of Matt Scott and the senior producer Kayla Belmore that everyone knows about. But there's actually another interview that was released on Press Start that for some reason no one has talked about, which is really weird because it has some information that is actually really interesting and it tells us a little bit more about the game that we wouldn't have known about. So I decided to make a quick video. This information has actually been released for like 6 days, but I haven't seen a single person cover it for some reason. So I wanted to make this video real quick to tell you all the cool new things that's been announced for the game. But before we get into it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. You have no idea how much helped me out. And let's get into it. And also, I want to give a huge shout out to the Discord user by the name of Super Unit. He's a sound producer and he helped me a lot with fixing my OBS so my sounds don't ever get too loud or there won't be any squeaking or perhaps crackling noises when I get too loud. I'm not really sure how to describe it, but he added all these filters and walked me through the steps on how to make the audio even better. So if you guys would, I would love to get some appreciation for Super Unit in the comments or something. He's definitely wonderful and hopefully you guys will notice a little bit of difference on the audio, but let's actually get into the article. So to actually find any information that is actually new that we haven't heard about on the last interview, we actually do have to scroll down a little bit on the webpage to find anything. And if you guys are interested, the link for this article will be in the comments and description just in case you guys want to see it personally. But the first thing that is actually new and exciting that we haven't actually heard about is this huge reference point for the tabletop RPGs and some inspiration they pulled from the game, and maybe it's like a trial. It's described like a whole new map that has its own storyline, kind of like a DLC, I suppose, that has their own side quests, their own main story and everything. They call a separate module, which is a term that a lot of D&D people would actually know. But this basically gives us some insights that Tiny Tina will be telling the main story, but we'll also have some random encounters on another map that is entirely independent. It sounds like it's going to be a completely new story, but it is described as being semi-related to the main story. But they do try to put some emphasis that it's their own independent major story quest, which is really, really cool. So we're going to see a lot of cool narratives that we're not used to in Borderlands, and I think that's very, very exciting. One of the other things that they mention here that I think is actually really interesting, because up until this point we thought that armor is mainly cosmetic, and I kind of thought we had some confirmation that it was only cosmetic, but we actually got confirmation from Matt that it definitely will impact your character builds and stats. So the armor itself is going to be a piece of loot that you can equip. This isn't purely cosmetic as we thought it was. It's going to be affecting our build and stats. Now, the main thing I think that's really interesting is that it impacts our build. So that means that perhaps a legendary armor will allow your character to be able to do something special, like how legendary class mods allowed your character to do something special. So perhaps we'll see class mods sort of transformed into the armor. The armor will give a special property, be magical items, stuff like that. So I think that's very interesting. But it also is stated here, it does have cosmetic implications as well. So if you guys are familiar with a transmog system that World of Warcraft has, it kind of sounds like we'll have our main piece of armor and then we could put a vanity piece over our armor to be the main appeal and like visual identity for our character. So it kind of seems like we have, I suppose, like skins or perhaps an entire system that allows us to customize how our character looks while still having the particular stats of a particular armor, which is really, really cool in my opinion. And then right here, here's a confirmation that just tells us that melee weapons will have an entirely different slot on the equipment page, which is really, really interesting to me, which is really, really cool because that's something I predicted on our last Tiny Tina video. So I think that's really cool that my suspicion was actually correct, which doesn't happen that often, I'll say. And another piece of information that we learned about the melee weapons is that they're going to be randomly generated, like the guns that we have. It's confirmed here that it says that we'll have stat boost attributes that traditional piece of loots would have. So it sounds like we can have randomized weapons as to be expected. They'll have elemental effects on some of the melee weapons as well. Another interesting point here is that there is this emphasis on crossbow bolts that will allow us to deal more damage with our melee weapon, which is really, really cool for the possible melee builds that we'll more than likely see when the game's released. Perhaps this is a hint that the main way to synergize with melee weapon is going to be have a crossbow in one hand and a melee in the other, and you're going to stack the bolts on the enemy to deal as much damage as possible, and then when you melee them, it'll do tons and tons of damage with the multipliers that the crossbow bolts will have. But that's pure speculation from there, but we do have confirmation that the crossbows will allow us to increase our melee damage, which is really, really cool. And on this article as well, we did get a little bit of confirmation on how the hero points are actually going to work. It seems like they're going to be more like classic RPG stats like strength, dexterity, intellect, wisdom, constitution, and atonement. Now, we have other things that we're more familiar with the Borderlands universe, like skill cooldown and spell cooldown, which is going to be really, really cool. And a lot of people have been speculating that the hero points are kind of just a replacement for the badass system, and this article does confirm our suspicions that that is entirely not true. Hero points are something that we're going to get right off the bat, and we're going to have alongside that badass tokens as well, which is really, really cool that we're going to have more and more and more to allow us to customize a character. But we're not going to get more information on that until another interview, probably down in the near future. Also, one of the more exciting things that I probably should address near the beginning of this video is that we got some confirmation on the different delivery systems that the spells will have. So like grenades, we know that in Borderlands 2 and 3 they spawn with longbow, Merv, bouncing, and a couple more. But it looks like the spells, which we did get confirmation, are going to be randomly generated as well, which is, you know, to be expected in a Borderlands game. All pieces of loot are randomly generated. We're going to have different delivery systems, aka attributes that the spells will have that allows them to be randomly generated in the system. And the attributes that we have confirmation here in this article are fire and forget. More than likely, this will probably be like a classic fireball. You shoot it, it goes off on its own, and then it hits the enemy and explode. That's what I think of. We have repeating spells, perhaps something like arcane missiles, or even something that we did see in the trailer. We saw some meteors fall out of the sky, but meteors are considered its own category, as we'll get in a few moments. Channeling spells, so you'll be sitting there shooting, holding out your wand or whatever, maybe your hand, and you'll be like constantly shooting it like a huge laser beam. Self-casting spells, so it sounds like that's an interesting category. It sounds like maybe you throw down the spell and it'll be like a little, I don't know, turret or something, and it'll shoot the spells by itself. I'm not really sure what to think on that one. If you guys have an idea on what that could actually mean, put in the comments. Perhaps that's self-procking, like, oh, you're at 30% HP, you get healed for 70% or something. I'm not really sure. That could be it actually, but I'd love to see what it's actually going to be. We have different types of fireballs, hawks, which is what we got confirmation earlier. The hawks is interesting that they emphasize that it's called hawk when they're very clearly in the trailer racks, but it's possible that they're not supposed to be racks and now it's just a placeholder. We got hydras, which I'm not really sure what that could mean. I suppose that could mean, like, I don't know. The only thing I could think of is from Pokemon Hydro Pump. I'm not really sure what hydras could mean, like a three-headed mythical creature. Anyways, and then we got meteors, which is so dope. Meteors are so exciting. I love the firestorm grenade in Borderlands 3 where you threw it down and a bunch of meteors would fall down. So I'm assuming it's sort of similar to that, but we've seen it in the trailer, so it doesn't really matter. I just love meteors. I think meteors are so cool ever since Final Fantasy VII. And then circles of protection, which we actually saw in the trailer as well. We saw a big ring of frost, which allowed the enemies in the circle to be instantly cryoed, which is really, really cool. You could do a lot of strategy with that if you'd like, or I could see some melee builds going up and hitting the enemies and then putting the circle and freezing them or something. One other thing is really cool is that we got a confirmation on new attachment for our weapons. We have new magical barrels, which is going to be that weapon we actually saw in the trailer where the guy was sprinkling the dust at the top of it, which will have elemental effects commonly, but it sounds like the guns itself shoots magic perhaps. It says here they're actually magic, which is interesting. And then it also says we have crossbow barrels, which is, I guess, a crossbow attachment that allows you to shoot crossbow bolts out of your guns, which once again will probably allow you to deal more damage with the melee, as we heard earlier in the article. There's a few other minor points, but that we won't address, but if you'd like, you can click the link down below and check out the article itself. The minor points are like map varieties and voice casting. That is exciting, but the stuff I addressed to them, I'm just so much more excited for than voice casting, in my opinion, even though I do love Ashley Birch is finally coming back for Tiny Tina. I'm super hyped for this game. I can't wait to get more details on this, and I'm excited for you guys to watch this video to get this new information that for some reason hasn't been covered yet on YouTube. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I hope y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.
And the last shall be first to immerse in a pass out heat, facing him up with a moxie melt till he woke up drowning in tchotchke hell. More in a cave with a torch on a wall than a window arrangement of porcelain dolls.